Okay. All right, welcome to the New Legend Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, so I'm excited for this show. We have Rob Kibbe here.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. So Rob, a really cool story. Rob and I have met probably in the last year and a half. Have probably seen each other around before that in different circles and spheres.
Yeah.
But Rob runs a really cool website and host of a podcast called the MuscleCar Place, correct?
Yeah, I'm in the podcast business, and I sideline in cars.
Okay, podcast has been sideline in cars. So he'll have something to probably teach me today on how to do a good podcast. So it's time we start doing a good show.
I've heard it's pretty good.
Okay, so just today, real quick, we want to give a shout out to Kenda. Always love their tires, like this rig right here behind you. Those are Kenda cleavers. We run those on all of our trucks. Super sweet. Nice balance of in between like a mud terrain and all terrain. And we dig them. Kenda's a friend of ours. So yeah, man, checking them out.
What size is that?
That's they're like basically a 33.
285, 7017?
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty custom.
Yeah.
So special thanks to Kenda. Check them out online and get some cleavers for your rig. They have some decent car tires as well. Like, have you heard of that show Hyperdrive on Netflix?
I have.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
One of their drivers, I thought at first, like, my impression was like, it's a little over the top with like the light shows and all this stuff. But if you watch it, it's actually pretty fun.
So Rutledge Wood does he host or do the voiceover or something like that? So I have seen it advertised. Tonight is actually my first free night in a month.
Okay.
To veg out.
Okay.
And including weekends, which I realize is lame.
Yeah, man.
But I wanted to check it out. I've only seen the stunts advertised though.
Yeah.
So it's like crazy cars doing loops, and are they real race car drivers?
Yeah,
or are they aspiring?
they're like amateur drivers. So it's like they bring their own cars and they're just doing like all these challenges, like drift. It's drift.
So
focused.
each person shows up with the car that they build.
Yes.
Or that they think they could do the best.
Yeah. So one of the drivers and he's really fun to watch. His name is Fielding Shredder. He's sponsored by Kenda. So he runs Kenda's, these KR20s or something on his Nissan 240.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, check it out. It's really fun.
Yes.
So thanks to that. So you breathe car culture to some extent, right? To a large extent.
Yes.
Okay. So this is going to be really good. And this is a topic I've wanted to talk about for a long time. If you are watching this on YouTube, behind us we have a beautiful 1964 Chevelle, which we'll hear a little bit about that story of that car. And we have an awesome 1978 Scout 2. So we're not gonna compare and contrast in a competitive way, but I just want to explore the differences, the similarities, the trends, the movements of muscle car culture.
There's definitely major parallels.
Yes, and a vintage 4x4 culture. But first, we always start, and I'm particularly interested to hear your answer. What was your first car of note? And let me add to that, what did it mean to kind of get your license? Was that a big thing for you?
Oh, yeah. So I can answer the license part first. So like most kids of my generation, I'm 44.
Okay.
So born in 75. And
good year.
That means that means I grew up with car TV shows.
Yeah.
Great time to be a kid. So by the time even getting my permit, which was on my 14th birthday, actually 2 days after my 14th birthday, because my birthday was on a Sunday.
Okay.
And the DMV was closed on Monday, so I had to wait. Oh, it was awful. 2 whole days.
So you were that excited about it.
I was pumped.
That's
but
rad.
That was probably a day that I remember more than getting the license, because I wanted that so bad.
Yeah, rad.
And then finally getting to drive, usually with my dad.
Yep.
That was everything I hoped it would be and more. And then we lived more than 2 miles away from school and not on a bus route, which meant I was eligible for a school permit.
Yes.
Which
but you can get at 15, right?
Back then you could get it at 14.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's crazy.
I opted for that one. I took driver's ed as soon as I could. And then my older sister already had a car, and it was just a pile, but I loved it. It was a 76 4-door Chevy Nova straight six, automatic on the column.
Sweet.
Which my Chevelle here actually is my first car.
Awesome.
But at that time, it was not a running driving car. It was under construction.
This car was.
Yeah.
In 1980.
Geez, this would be early 90s probably by this point.
Okay.
When I was a kid, by the time I was 8 years old, I knew that this car, and it had to be this car, not another 64 Chevelle, but this Chevelle had to be reborn and be my car.
That's rad, man.
And I knew it. I was here to protect it.
Yes.
And here to love it. And convinced my dad to restore it with me.
Cool.
And I just wanted to work on a car with him. And it was a pure Iowa car. By the time I was 7 years old, it was an unsafe for the road.
Wow.
Throw it away type thing.
Yeah.
But he's a softie. He's also, grew up as a farm kid, and farm kids can fix anything. You know, it just doesn't occur to you.
So you attacked it kind of as a high schooler, early college?
Yes. Yeah, that was the first restoration. It's been restored now 3 times.
Wow. So I want to talk about that progression, because I've seen trucks come through here that have been guys like you were like, I built this in high school, and it's like so bad.
And it was.
That's awesome. But let's go back a little bit, because I'm fascinated by, you brought this up, and no other guests have really brought this up, the diet of kind of car focused television shows I'm 45. So
yeah.
Of course we have Dukes of Hazzard. You're a big fan of Dukes of Hazzard.
Yep.
Same here. But I like Knight Rider,
A-Team, Fall Guy, Hardcastle and McCormick.
Let's dig in a little bit.
Yep.
A-Team, they had the Chevy van.
I think it was a GMC.
Oh, yeah, okay, GMC van.
But yeah. That van.
Fall Guy
had multiple square body trucks.
Yeah, square, like the K20s. Yeah, I remember that show. I love that show. Were there any others kind of getting obscure beyond that?
Oh, well, they all featured cars or stunts
Starsky
pretty
and
heavily.
Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch. Yeah,
That's a little
Torino,
older.
But that poor thing was just, it couldn't get out of its own way. The Hardcastle McCormick, though, was kind of a weird outside eclectic show. And in the show, I believe they called it a Coyote, but it was a Manta kit car.
Oh,
supposed to be built on maybe a VW Bug chassis. And the older actor in that show, whose name I cannot recall, had so much trouble getting into it that for the second season they rebodied a DeLorean.
Nice.
And called it the same because it was easier for him to get into.
Funny.
Yeah.
Also, like even Magnum PI, like they had that Ferrari 308, which was like super cool.
And that's not a show I watched hardly at all, but as I understand it, the 308 would get newer.
Oh.
Like maybe every other year they would get a new one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but probably the most prolific as far as like identifiable cars, like the General Lee.
Yeah, the General Lee is like, I think I read an article in Hot Rod magazine that it's like the most recognizable car maybe in the world. And people may not even know why they know it. They may not know it's a Dodge Charger.
That's right.
They will call it a General Lee.
Okay, interesting.
Because in Spanish it's something zero uno.
Okay. How funny.
Something like that.
Okay. So that's exciting. We'll talk more about this car, beautiful car behind us, because it looks like a very nice quality restoration now.
It is. This time around, I was the general contractor only. I like turning wrenches, but making beautiful bodies. That's not mine.
That's the thing. So the body works beautiful. Okay, so another question that we kind of beat to death, but it's an interesting perspective every single time is, what do you think is going to be the future of driving?
You mean kind of just with the rise of maybe electric vehicles, or also the decline in desire for kids?
Both, and the third aspect, autonomous driving.
I think it's all going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think in our lifetimes we will stop driving cars.
Okay, that's good news.
But I do think it's coming, and kind of like most automation things, it usually starts in an urban environment and works its way out.
Totally agree. Yeah. But do you think because there's something about this culture is crazy. Like we talk about this a lot, but these are just machines. Like they're rather simple machines, but they have such a profound impact, particularly on American culture.
Yeah.
They're almost indistinguishable. Like, and you think of hot rod culture, motorcycle culture, like in the 30s, 40s, even, like probably an emergence in the 30s. They've played such like 4x4s, like getting people out exploring. So do you think in, let's say 40 years in the future, so past our lifetimes, will people still have a desire to go to drive?
I hope so. But I really don't know. I mean, we're postulating at this point.
Of course.
I do think there will still be vehicles around that people can use and enjoy and probably use for functional things. To this day, I mean, we're sitting here in the middle of Iowa. You can still find 50-year-old tractors working.
Right.
Like they're still on the job. They're not for funsies.
That's right. Right. How funny.
So, yeah, I think that will be out there in some shape, form, or factor. But things are accelerating faster than I really thought they would.
Right.
There are autonomous vehicles now.
Right.
And there have been for a few years under pretty heavy R&D. I mean, the OEMs don't roll out new tech to us 2 years after they thought of it. Sometimes it's 15 years later.
Yep.
There have been autonomous vehicles rolling around the GM facility for years.
That's right. Fascinating little thing I just learned. We were at the Scout Nationals, and we were talking about the history of the International Scout, and the first design concept, really like the origin, was 1959, and by 61 they had a working model, which is extremely quick. And then the Scout 2 started getting development, which the Scout 2 is behind you. They came out in 71, but they started development in 65, so it was a 6-year rollout.
Wow.
But you're right. So stuff. Here's what I think. And we're already seeing it, the rise in experiential driving parks or tracks or off-road parks. And I think, so the question is how do the vehicles get there? But just like you said too, you feel like this stewardship of this car, to preserve it, to carry it forward. And I'm sure your kids, to some extent, will carry, at least one of your kids will carry that same.
Oh yeah, it already has an earmarked next owner.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that kind of passion, that kind of commitment won't be squelched very easy. And so.
No, I mean, this will take. So I mean, I think your example was 50 years from now when we're dead and gone. I might still be here. So I clean living, you know. So.
That's right.
But 100 years from now, I don't have a clue.
Right. Yeah.
I can tell you that in my family, I have 3 kids, and I have 2 girls and a boy. Mm-hmm. The boy is a small version of me. He's all in. Can't
awesome.
wait to drive. I have a 73 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia that cars to me are all emotional. They're not investments in the slightest.
Right.
And that was a car that my dad bought for my mom, and then he and I restored 2 years ago.
Wow, fun.
Kept it for years. But by this point in my life, I now know that it's not my car. It's one of my kids' cars.
Right.
So I have a daughter who's just turned 13.
Nice.
Well, it'll be her car.
Yeah.
Right? And that makes sense.
Yeah.
To me.
Is she stoked about it?
She's pumped.
Good.
Not because she's in love with the car, but because her dad wanted her to have it.
I know. Same with my kids. One of my goals in getting into going from hobby to profession in the car world was that someday when I'm done with this business, I want to have 4 sweet Scouts. It could be a Wagoneer too, but some 4 cool vehicles that I pass down to my 4 kids.
Yeah.
Because cars in a very unique way are just strong conduits of memories and connections, and
yes,
and it's kind of a unique thing.
Yeah, this particular Chevelle is white with red interior for a reason. It's because when my parents were new and they ordered it, it was white with red interior. Mm-hmm. Like it's wearing the same. That's ermine white.
Yeah,
like,
nice.
And I'm not really into paint colors either, but I made sure that was spot on.
Yep.
When we went to go get it, because for the last 55 years, we have pictures of our family.
That's so cool, man.
Around this car.
That's special that you guys actually, because you hear this story all the time. I've heard it 1,000 times. Like, oh, I should have kept that.
The one that got away, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and especially in the Midwest. Like I was talking to this guy, John Clancy, who's kind of a real pivotal guy in the preservation of the International Scout parts market and just this kind of culture. And he said he got his first Scout in 1983, and it was a 1979.
Wow.
And the first thing he did was put quarters and rockers on it.
Wow, I believe it.
It's 4 years old, and it was already rusted out.
Iowa, when I was a kid, I do remember Iowa even had inspections.
Oh, really?
And not just emission. I don't even remember if they had emissions, but they had a body and safety.
Yes.
And people would absolutely bondo the bejesus out of stuff to get through safety.
It's it's interesting that I'm glad they got rid of that. But Connecticut, I grew up in Connecticut, and they had the same rules. And I remember chicken wire newspaper, like just forming.
Anything you could do. I lived in Connecticut for a while. Actually, I registered this car there. It took me 2 tries. It was hard to do.
That's funny. Well, let's dig in. So first, tell us a little bit about how you transitioned from just like a hobbyist to making car culture and cars a business.
Yeah. So my education is mechanical engineering. So we're in Ames, Iowa. I went to Iowa State University, and that's what I wanted to study there. My dad was an electrical engineer. That had some impact, but I loved cars so much, I thought the next best thing would be mechanical engineering. And it was a little less hands-on and more theoretical than I probably would have understood up front.
Yep.
But by my senior year, I was actually studying the things I wanted to, which was engine design, combustion theory, all the good stuff.
Okay.
But also by that point, I was ready for a hands-on career. I want to go fly airplanes in the military, anything else. I want to do something different. So I went down that track. I took the first job that came my way so I could pay for flying lessons. And after the first flying lesson, I had a quick financial reality from college, like, holy crap, I have a mountain of debt and I'm broke. Like, I can't do anything. Yeah. So I spent the next 5 years just getting out of debt.
Okay.
Just working as an engineer for at that point defense contractors. Okay. Got married, and then by the time I was 30, I did have a pilot's license, but it was too late for that career.
Right.
So I was really looking for the purpose God made me to be. And I was pretty sure sitting in a cubicle testing and promoting software wasn't it. And I had no complaints. I was not mistreated by an employer. Right. Nobody was. This was my desire. I could still be working in a normal corporate setting, just fine. But I wanted something else, and I just thought there's something more I'm supposed to be doing, or something different. So without a really long podcast, I ended up hiring a career coach to kind of walk me through it because I couldn't figure it out.
You knew like what you were doing was just like not a great.
I'm not on the right track.
Yeah.
I did not grow up in an entrepreneurial family at all. My mom was an elementary music teacher for 34 years. My dad worked for one employer. I mean, he was in the Navy and he had one employer for 30 years.
Wow.
And they both retired, frankly, with dignity and plenty in the bank, and everything was fine. But I didn't have anybody to really go to say, how do I work for myself? How do I do? I feel like that's probably what I'm supposed to be doing.
You just couldn't find a fit.
No.
So you're like smart dude, mechanical engineering degree, doing
I don't know squat about business, and I don't know how to make this work.
But there was something again in your thinking that was not driving you towards going to get a different job.
That's correct.
Okay.
There was another job I wanted, and if there was one that I maybe wanted that sounded appealing, I was thoroughly unqualified. Like,
was place at all in your equation? Like, because you could. I'm thinking of you going like, you could have went to work for Chevy or at a car company.
Yeah,
and been a part of something spiritual.
It's funny you mentioned that. Was that like most young mechanical engineers, especially when you're in college?
Yeah.
You kind of dream of working for an automotive company. They set the bar so high. Like if you don't have like a 3.5 GPA, you don't even get an interview.
Okay.
So the second time around, maybe I could have.
Yeah.
By this point, though, I was in my early 30s, and we had our first child.
Yep.
And we live here in Iowa, and 95% of our family lives within a 2-hour drive.
Because that is a significant thing to think about. Not only just the desire you have and like this fit, but also like that is a real thing to go like, we want to stay in this place. Like we have some roots and we want to stay in this place. So then that complicates the issue.
We're here because we're choosing to be here, because this is where we want to raise our family. This is, I've talked to you about this one. This is not my ideal location for a hot rod company.
Right.
I'm kind of in the media business not by default, but because I can be. Mm-hmm. It is a business that I can, thankfully, because of the internet. Now, 10 years in here, I can be anywhere. I have to be open to travel, which I am. But I can choose to live where I want to live and make the connections. You have to be very intentional about it. Right. It would be easier if I lived in I don't want to live in Southern California,
right.
but we almost moved to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Right, another
about 6 years ago.
Car culture hub.
That was an area that was kind of like Des Moines, Iowa, frankly.
Right.
I mean, real mellow, nice. But we just decided to stay here, and finding that business fit. Living here was really hard, Sean.
Yeah, I know.
Really hard. But finally now, I don't live anywhere near any members on my team. My producer is out of Dallas.
Okay.
Our sales director is out of South Carolina. The guy that does all of our promotional and marketing content is out of Florida.
Wow.
And the person who does our show write-ups is out of Detroit. He's the only guy that actually works for a car company by day.
Yeah, right.
So
it's all just technology based.
Yeah, it has all kind of come together around that. And this car in particular, is a result of that business. So I realized at some point I'm not going to be a hot rod shop.
Right.
I'm probably not going to develop parts.
Did you tinker around
Absolutely.
that idea?
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought, I love building cars. I wanted to build like General Lees for a living. I now realize that you probably can't just do General Lees, but
Right.
I wanted to do something I was very passionate about. Everybody loves either the build side or the driving side a little more or the other.
Right.
I love the building side, but I love the driving side even more. So I said, all right, that's where I'm going to go all in.
Okay.
So I want cars that I can drive, and I want to be covering an industry where I can drive and where others really like to drive, and we'll figure it out, make a business around that. But this particular car is built to drive.
Yes.
As fast as I can without killing myself. And it looks so nice because others made it look nice.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to look this nice when we started it, but it's born out of choosing the right passion. This car was built by a man named Jeff Allison. He runs a company called Allison Customs in Bloomfield, New Mexico, which is nowhere near Ames, Iowa, at all. But the day I took my podcast business from a part-time venture out of my basement to a full-time operation, he contacted me and said, I have had a lifelong dream of chasing my passion too. And I've wanted to open my own hot rod shop forever. And today I am, and I'm offering to build your car as a gift, as a thank you for the inspiration. So
that's amazing.
I wrote him back and I said, okay, tell nobody this, especially the listeners. A hot rod shop is a terrible idea. You're going to go broke and your wife's going to leave you. You are screwed. Don't do this. And he said, oh, no. I forgot to tell you. I've been building cars for like 25 years. And I'm an airline captain.
Interesting.
I have plenty of income and a wonderful schedule. This doesn't really have to sustain me. I want this to be a part of my life, but this doesn't have to sustain me.
Yeah.
Let me fly you out here, and we can meet, and you can see the cars I've done. And if you think this is up to snuff, we'll do it. So he did. The rest is history. The paint and body ended up being done by another shop.
Okay.
By our choice, so that we could take the car to SEMA. So it was a SEMA 2013 car.
Nice.
The shop that did the paint and body is called Street Metal Concepts out of Orlando, which is nowhere near Ames, Iowa, or Bloomfield, New Mexico.
Right. Wow.
And they, just like Allison Customs, were a young shop on the way up. And, most shops that I interact with, especially on projects, we're looking for a trade of exposure.
Right.
I certainly can't pay what their full-time rate would be. But I can give them a level of exposure, and the podcast medium is so unique because people are listening, usually with earbuds, to every word that they're not going to get elsewhere. They have both benefited from that, thankfully.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome.
I tell everybody up front, like, I really can't promise you anything. I feel this will be effective. It's always worked for everybody else.
Right.
But this car is the result of chasing the right passion.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
And that's pretty cool, man, that those guys stepped up and are a part of this story forever now, which is really neat.
I have another show with a different car as its backbone. I have my dream car was the General Lee.
Yeah.
I was wanting to make a General Lee. So 2 years ago, I ended up buying a clone.
Yeah.
It was painted, and so it was orange, and it had the decals on it, and everything else was like wrong.
Not right.
It had a big block in it, and that I wanted, but everything else I kind of took out and threw away.
Yep.
And the shop that ended up helping me do all the body fit finish trim, like put the nice series correct vinyl top trim on, even though the car has no vinyl top, and make the push bar that's probably from like a late 70s Toyota that you have to make out of screenshots. That was a Warren Customs out of Alabama.
Okay.
I've had this experience of making good content, which is what I'm good at. I probably can't build the cars. I can turn the wrenches, but I can't build the cars.
Right.
But doing the right thing in the industry I love has always kind of helped things rise to the top.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I know for our journey, just speaking of the amount of passion that goes into a lot of builders, well, you hope that it's based on passion. Because there's also like a lot in the industry, unfortunately, like this dudes that love cars, they also just want to make a quick buck. And those guys, that just drives me nuts because like they just do poor work and like just gives the industry a bad name. But it's also hard to compete with passionate people who are willing to work for next to nothing.
It is, and I mean we don't need to be aloof here. I mean we're in an industry of wants, not needs. Nobody needs.
Of course,
right.
Of course,
this is passion. This is fun. This is enjoyment. Yeah. But you need air and water and food and shelter. That's what you need.
That's right.
So that's kind of where you always default to. And yes, when it comes to passion, I mean, we were chatting about this ahead of time. There are certain services that you need just in producing this show right now that we're doing that are still hard to pull off.
Yeah.
Because there are others out there that will do it for nothing.
That's right.
Because they're passionate about it.
That's right.
They want a name, you know.
That's right.
But
I think it's great giving opportunity to those kind of people and helping them turn it into maybe the next step for them.
Again, the quality will always rise to the top.
That's really true.
The half-baked stuff, the stuff that's done to turn a buck or to get a click or to that never works out in the long run.
Yeah, one thing that I'm passionate about too is helping shop owners, just because for so many years, like because it's a passion thing, and I really love people, and you go like, I want to see you have this car, like I want to see you experience it. So like I know you can only afford whatever X amount of dollars, so I'll do it for that price. And then you realize like you're not making any money, and you're just working, you're grinding yourself into the ground, and your employees are not getting taken care of. So to transition that into like go, no, the work of our hands and this passion project that we're doing is not worth less than someone that's programming a software engineer that's making tech online. So like this is the perception that like, oh, shop guys should only make $10 an hour. Like, no, that they're worth that. To be a craftsman is worth something, and to put out something that's a good quality product that brings joy to people and brings happiness.
Oh yeah. I mean, a promotional exchange and fair pay for work are two totally different things.
Yes, but I love that those guys, because we do that all the time, and we step up all the time and go, because that's how you build a business, man. You get your name out there, and you connect with good people. You build a good network, and so I love that the story of this car. It's awesome.
And you build a product somebody wants.
That's right.
I mean, I was here Friday with a buddy who just got a 85 Land Cruiser.
Nice.
And said he doesn't know a lot about four-wheel drives, but he knew that it was sitting weird. Yeah. And it had an old lift kit on it.
Okay.
Old Man Emu.
Yeah.
Is that a name you know?
Good stuff, yeah.
So we swung by, and one of your fellows out here was kind of helping him walk through. It's not a Scout. Right. It's not American. But
right.
You know, it's cool.
Super cool.
So the passion always bleeds through.
Yeah.
And he was given some very good advice.
Great.
And was sent on his way.
We do that a lot, and I love that. And I'm sure you do a ton.
Yeah, you know,
right.
Once a week, have a 1-hour conversation with somebody about how to do something, and I may never talk to them again.
Right. I love that.
Because somebody did that to me.
Yes.
Invested a lot in me.
Same, man. That's been a foundation of when I was building my first Scout in the very early 90s. I remember the businesses. And what's funny is 20 years later, maybe 25 years later, I'm still doing business with a lot of those companies that helped me when I was an enthusiast.
Really?
That spent the time to go, like, oh, do you have $5,000 to spend? No, well, I'm not talking to you. Like, and you get that sometimes. Sometimes people get tired of dealing with people in the car, even in the passion business.
I guess we all have our days.
Yeah.
But no, more times than not, if you can help, you will.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So those people that just spent time, even when I didn't spend any money. So we spend hours on the phone weekly going like, hey, here's some advice. And it's hard. You can't do it. We have other things to do. So it's hard to balance that. But
yeah, like once a week.
I
can do this.
I like that. Okay, so let's get to this topic that I'm fascinated about. So I have to admit, I grew up, I was a muscle car kid. Like my first car, well, I had a bunch of them, but my first car that I built was a 1970 Buick Skylark.
Really?
That I got for $35. And I had this GMC Sprint that like was rumored in town like to be like super fast at one time. I bought it, but it was sat in this field. And so it was literally like, it looked like really nice on the outside, but the whole frame was super rusty.
Sitting on the
floors,
ground.
it was just all rusted out from condensation and moisture. But it had this engine in it. So I bought that car, bought this Buick, put the motor. I did like some tune-up stuff, just a couple of the goodies to the Chevy 350. Slapped it in there. I was the happiest kid in the world, man. Just doing burnouts everywhere. I loved it. Doing a lot of stupid things.
You put a Chevy engine in the Buick?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're like forward thinking.
Yeah. That Buick 350 wasn't great. But so that's the world I kind of grew up in. I still love muscle cars. But starting in the early to mid 90s, I started getting into 4x4s and just adventuring off road and getting into four wheeling. And so that brought all this, the love of driving, like, which is a little different. It's a similar thing to driving off road is really amazing. I love it. And building preserving cool old things. I love it. So, but I've been critical of muscle car culture in the sense of like, you at best drive it a couple miles down the road to the drive-in or to the car show. You park it, open the hood, set up a lawn chair, and sit by your car and just look at it.
I don't like that either.
Okay, so this is why it's great. But do you admit that is a part of muscle car culture?
It seems to be the one that we're almost raised in.
Yes.
Because I mean, when we were in high school, these were already old cars.
I know.
I remember going to like the Bebops, whatever that, whatever the 50s style hamburger joint was. And that's what the old guys would do.
Yes.
They would show up with their 70 Chevelle SS, pop the hood, and we would just talk about the car. And I would go to good guy shows here in Des Moines before they even had the autocross set up.
Yes.
I love cars, and I was bored. Like, this is not for me.
Right. Because you can only look at so many 69 Camaros and go like, yeah, they're kind of cool.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're probably most interested in one you're building or restoring yourself to talk to that guy, how they did that. But once you've had your run, you're kind of done. Right. There's nothing else left to do. So that culture is probably out there. I haven't been associated with it for so long I don't remember it.
Okay, good. So you're bringing something to the table that we bring to the table, and I feel like vintage 4x4 culture is inherently. I'll give you a little story. This event called the Sierra Trek in Northern California. It's like this. It's kind of just a big meetup, couple hundred people, 100 trucks. They got guided through the Fordyce Creek Trail, which is a very hardcore trail, but it was fun. Just like you'd have all these rock crawlers and all this stuff, but there was always this contingent, and this is the one I just was fascinated by, of the old timers. So you'd have these trucks on like 38-inch tires, like lockers front and rear, full hydraulic steering,
awesome.
4-to-1 transfer case, all this tricks rock crawler trucks. But then you'd have and they'd be like going crazy. But then you have these old dudes in these like 60s era, like still 60s era with carburetors, like these CJ5s and CJ2As. And they would just do everything the rock crawlers would do. And like they had these old trucks that they were preserving.
And they could do it.
But they were using them.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always been fascinated. And I love that that's what you bring to the table too. That like these old cars are rad to look at, but they're better to drive. Like they're fun to drive and to build and do all that good stuff.
There's and I'm you're the host here, not me, but there's certainly two sides of what you can do with the old cars. I have now by my mid-40s started to have more respect for stuff that's actually all original but functioning as it was designed.
I agree with you.
That was, when I was 16, I did what everybody did, like, yoink, there goes the intake, there goes the exhaust, man.
Right.
This will be better. And you put all the hot rod stuff up, and you kind of trap it together. And then if you if you were to get in the high school Buick that you got, like, this thing sucks. I hate driving this car. I think I'm going to die.
Right. But it did do good burnouts.
Yeah, that culture kind of gets old. But if you can make something that you look forward to driving, that's not a chore. No matter how good the paint is, you don't really care where you park it. Or if you just, be smart, then they're fun again.
Yes.
And they are a ball to drive fast. New cars are better. I mean, I'm not stupid. A new one's going to blow the doors off, but you have a pretty good time wheeling a 55-year-old rig at 80.
Right, but let's contrast that, because
or anything.
I've talked about this all the time, but I promise you, getting in this 64 Chevelle is different than getting in a 2013 Dodge Charger.
Oh yeah, they're like, they just happen to both have four wheels.
Yeah, but it's like the way it
really
feels,
related.
the way you feel, the way you're like. There's this inextricable connection to the past, like where you're like, oh, this is just rad. There's something about it that's really magical, in my opinion.
There's all of that. I mean, you're also just a little more connected to the machine.
Right.
I completely believe that people maybe of our era and definitely older, they might have just been better drivers because they had to be. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine rolling around on a 3-inch wide bias ply with drum brakes and manual knuckle steering? Right. You better be good at driving it or you're going to die, and that thing's new.
Adjusting the timing on the steering wheel.
That's really As you go, modern tires, and I'm sure this Kenda tire is wonderful, but it's got a factor of safety built in that's saving somebody's life and they don't even know it.
That's right.
So there's a very different connection. But in this Chevelle in particular, I've driven this car since I was 17 years old. I still feel the same when I get in it. I know where the bumper is and I can't see it.
Yes.
The door is 3 inches wide. That's all that's between me and the world.
Yep.
When you get in a new car, that thing's a cocoon. It's built to protect you.
Yeah,
it's very safe.
Insulate.
But it really kind of takes you out of the harm.
Right.
and a little bit of the harm is why old cars are a little bit fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that's good. So you're kind of already debunking my some of my critique of muscle car culture, in that there is a movement, because I've been kind of out of it. I've been head deep in like 4x4s and vintage 4x4s and just off-roading, overlanding. That whole world is like my world.
Yeah.
I have a couple cars, a couple 80s turbo cars, and I'm building a BMW E30. So I'll get back into like the driving world.
You had texted me like a year ago. Did you buy? I think it was white. What did you buy?
Yeah, I bought a 89 Ford Probe GT
yes,
white 5-speed
that's what it was.
turbo. Amazing car. And then I bought my newest acquisition is an 85.5 Chrysler Laser XE turbo.
Laser. Is that a K car?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's 2.2.
That's a K car.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that 2.2 was in pretty much anything they made.
I mean, it's fun. And like, I just like, again, 'cause it's like the quirkiness of them. They're kind of weird. They don't really drive that great, to be honest. They're front wheel drive turbo, so like they get a lot of torque steer, but it's kind of a handful to drive them, and I think that's fun.
It is. I mean, all things kind of eventually become vintage, I suppose. Like right now, there's a huge resurgence in the muscle car world. Not resurgence. The 80s era has come into its own.
Yes.
That's a 30-year-old car now.
Right.
I mentioned Good Guys before. So there's the Good Guys Hot Rod Show. And if you're a muscle car listener, you probably know what that is. At trucks, too. But they usually had a year limit on the show.
Yes.
And it originally was for hot rods only, 64 and older.
Really?
If you're newer than 64, you suck. You're not
That's
welcome.
old.
Then they bumped that up to 72.
Okay. That makes sense.
And this year, it's now 1987.
Interesting.
So that means when you go to the autocross, you start seeing Fox body Mustangs, third-gen F-bodies, so Camaros, Firebirds. You see a lot of the G-body GM cars, so if you think Monte Carlo Grand National.
Yep.
Well, with some simpler bolt-on speed parts, those things go from a decent old 80s car to something pretty good.
Right.
And by the 80s, it is a better car. I mean, it's a more real car.
Yeah.
It's not like the old stuff.
And
it's
people
definitely
are probably
not good
less
like the new
afraid to
stuff.
drive them and use them.
Yeah, and there's somewhat of the entry point. You
Yeah,
can
I
get
love
yourself into one of those. Maybe not a Fox body; those are starting to get kind of pricey.
I
but
had a few of those. I like those.
But like a G body or something like you can still find your way in for maybe $5,000 or less, and not get something that's a pile.
Right.
Yes.
That's cool.
Whereas a 68, 69 Charger, you're going to start with a pile at $20,000.
So you're at the heart of this, heart of this experiential move, a move towards experiencing old cars, not just looking at them.
Yeah.
So what is in that world? Like, what are some of the things that you kind of bring in, you and others, but are bringing into the conversation and experience of owning a muscle car or vintage car?
So there are a lot of parallels to what we're doing right now. So my Chevelle here and this 78.
Yeah.
This 78. These are cousins.
Yeah.
They're both. They're expensive.
You're right.
But they're built very well. They're engineered with high-end speed parts to make something old drive like new.
That's right.
There's that side, and in our world, that's called pro touring.
Pro touring. Okay.
Yeah.
They call it still resto mods too?
No.
Okay.
Well, the wrong people do.
Okay.
You, Sean, are cool enough to say pro touring. You've got a flat bill hat. You've got to be cool.
All right. Pro touring.
Then there's one of my friends is Mike Finnigan.
Yeah.
He is best known for his work on the show Roadkill.
Yes.
Roadkill is the flip side of our world. That's where you take anything, rat it together, and just use it.
Yes.
No matter what. It would be more akin to your terribles.
Yeah, which is
awesome as well.
Right.
There's no wrong answer in here. Not using the car is the wrong answer.
Yes.
Actually, I guess
I
would say.
I love that.
But you can take a ratted out anything to any car show and get just as much respect or love
cool?
or engagement as this car here. I love them all. Good. I love them both. There's one I probably would rather drive, for 1,000 miles more than the other.
Yeah.
But they all have their place. Getting to build them is probably just in our world. That's probably still more popular than driving them. I'm more unicorn. I would rather drive them than build them. And I love building. I love general contracting them. It's so much fun for me. I finally get to do a little engineering work and select the right components. And then really fun. If I don't like the components, I can actually work with the manufacturer and say, all right, I want this to be 3 inches this way. What's that going to do to this, and this? That for me is the funnest. But my end goal is always to get to drive it.
Yes. And a similar in the vintage 4x4 world, again, guys want to take them, they want to drive. A lot of them are because their Scouts in particular are always convertibles. They're always removable hardtops.
Yeah.
So people love the idea of cruising to the beach, just kind of getting friends, cruising around. So that's one aspect. But another aspect is getting out on adventures and getting off the pavement to some really remote and beautiful places. And so we see a lot of customers just getting stoked about that. Hey, can I put this bumper on there that might help me carry some extra fuel, or a roof rack so I can put a rooftop tent on it, or just
what was the Scout with the topper on it that the Dirt Everyday guys were here.
Yeah, really cool.
Okay, that's as experienced as it gets.
That's right.
We'll live in this raining truck.
Yes.
And they got a little taste of Iowa summer too, right? I'm sorry about the monsoon.
Right.
It does happen.
And what's cool is I was just at the Nationals, and one thing you said is really true. I'm growing more and more to respect the preservation of, still use, but the preservation and use of totally original stuff. Because it tells a story. It's one thing looking at this truck, but the frame is not original, the engine's not original. It's all been reimagined. But going back and saying this one this drives exactly like it did in 1967 is pretty magical. Because then you like the other night, me and my wife were driving. I have a couple old original trucks, and we're just it's so weird. Another couple in 1968 could have been driving. We're probably driving this truck, going out to dinner, after the dude did some chores in the yard with it and did other things. It's just cool to put yourself in that mindset. So I actually appreciate and respect that movement as well.
But I have learned that one. As long as they were running and driving, yes. So the title sponsor for our title show is called MuscleCar Place, the MuscleCar Place. This title sponsor for that has been National Parts Depot for years.
Yep.
The owner of that company, he and his father have this amazing car collection. They restore, nut and bolt and drive every one of them.
Cool.
And they like everything. There's
awesome.
no wrong for them.
I love that.
But some of his best stories are cars that he bought, and he told me this amazing story of purchasing a 62 Cadillac DeVille with factory air and AM/FM. I think he called it the Wonder Bar stereo. It was a old timey Seeking radio AM.
Way. That's really cool.
And he drove it from Pittsburgh to Orlando with the air on and listening to the radio, and it all worked.
That's amazing.
And he's got a couple good mechanics who can actually tune a carburetor. And he said, you need to understand, when you hit the key, a carbureted car should start fine. It doesn't have to pump and pump and pump and pump. No, there's something wrong if there's that. So everybody, and he's a very purist. Like, he understands pro touring, but he would never do it.
Okay.
I just now kind of appreciate both sides of it.
It is cool. I'm looking at an offer has come into my life for a 1975 Buick Electra 225.
That's a big sucker.
It's a two-door. It's got like 38,000 original miles. Zero. It's like in beautiful condition. But all I want to do is like get that thing and drive it to Southern California and just like be cruising to the Southwest, man. Just like
rolling hills. My mom's car when I was a kid was a 76 Cadillac sedan DeVille.
Oh, yeah, huge.
And it was, when we got it, it was like 8 years old.
Yeah.
But it had air suspension in the back. It had air shocks.
Yeah, right.
And I remember just almost barfing on every car trip. Like, it was so floaty. Like, I can't take it. Please pull over.
How funny. Well, cool, man. So, all right. So you guys you dive back in. So like some of the events, like your autocross has become, I mean, what is this like? There's something like called Auto X or something. Like there's more like experiential events starting to pop up around the country.
There are. So there's a little bit of everything. There's drag racing.
Yeah. Has always been around, which is great.
So on the roadkill side, I'll kind of start there and work my way to the autocross. So on the roadkill side, one of their biggest events now is called Roadkill Nights.
Yeah, which is
set
awesome.
up on Woodward Avenue in Detroit, and they just have heads up street racing on Woodward, and it's legal.
Have you been there?
I have been to Woodward before, but never during that event.
Okay.
We actually had our first team coverage this year where our guy who lives in Michigan went and covered it on site for us. And I used to do some work for the company that produces that event, so I've always had a good connection with them. Then we have things like the Optima Search for the Ultimate Street Car.
Yeah.
That's as pro touring as it gets. And it started with muscle cars, and now it's open to really anything that you want. And they imagine SCCA without 18 million rules.
Yeah,
and
that's what kills me, dude.
Ultimate street car.
Yeah.
It's the rule sheet is 3 pages long.
Yeah.
But it's a street car. If it rains, we're still racing. And you do different segments. You're going to do an autocross segment. You will do a hot lap segment. And you're going to real tracks like Daytona, Road America, real know what you're doing or slow down or it's going to kill you type tracks. Then you do a speed stop segment, which is kind of like a mix of an autocross and a braking competition.
Okay.
Then there's a whole nother segment called design and engineering. The car is parked. We're going to walk through how you built this thing.
I like
Stem
that.
to stern, top to bottom.
Great.
And that's easy to do with a 71 Camaro. That's hard to do with a 2018 Camaro.
Yeah.
How are you going to differentiate what you've done from stock? Because stock is, in their world, is zero.
Okay.
If it's stock, that it's nice, but you haven't done anything.
Right.
If you have gutted the interior, you lose points.
Interesting.
Yeah. If the horn doesn't work, you lose points. This is a street car.
It's
going to be street legal. That's probably the most extreme, best
and they
experiential
move around the country.
Yeah, they have 8 events a year. We actually, our company hosts and produces a series podcast to follow that series through the year.
Wow. Okay.
Out of that was the Auto X series, and Auto X is just cross. So Auto Cross series, and that's where they only do autocross, but you can run a little more of an extreme car.
Got it.
And like any form
can you also still run like just kind of a beater?
Anything you want.
As long as it's got a battery tied down.
As long as it's legal and safe.
Yeah.
You can run anything you want.
Okay.
Born out of that are like these week-long road trips.
Yes.
And there's one that FM3 Performance does where they will start in like North Carolina and they'll do like a hot rod power tour. But instead of getting to the location that day after the 100-mile drive and sitting in lawn chairs, do like 5 hours of autocrossing.
Yes.
Like hardcore.
That's awesome.
And then you do it again the very next day. Those are the type of experiential trips. And yeah, I've mentioned autocrossing
so that's
a lot.
growing. That's healthy and growing.
It's only getting bigger.
Okay. That's
the
super
Good
cool,
Guys
man.
circuit hasn't, they've dedicated themselves to it. There's more road course racing than I ever thought. And I didn't grow up in an area where you wanted to turn corners. You want to drag race. I mean, that's the only thing a muscle car was supposed to be any good at.
Now, on the MuscleCar Place website,
Yeah.
is there information about, like, if someone wanted to say, like, hey, I have like a 97 Miata, like I would love to go take it out racing for a weekend and find out about one of these events.
So it would be good if we did list that. Most of how we show what people can do or give them that information is within the shows that we produce.
Okay.
So we're a podcast company.
Yep,
so we
listen to the podcast.
We crank out. So MuscleCar Place is a 3 times a month show. We have another show called Kibbe and Friends. That was the one I started with Mike Finnigan.
Yep.
That's a 4 time a month show. Then we have the Optimus Search for the Ultimate Street Car. That's a couple times. Honestly, pick your poison.
Yeah.
Listen to any of them.
Okay.
You will start to figure out what's what.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. And just a quick inspiration, because that's actually really helpful for my perception of muscle car culture, man. So I thank you for what you're doing in that space. And thanks for bringing me up to speed.
Thank you.
I do want to encourage, because there's like this other cool movement, and I'm sure this is happening in the muscle car world, or already has, but like in the scout and vintage, mostly in the scout world, it's really growing, and I love it. There's like these younger entrepreneurial type of dudes that are like starting to create clubs, and they're just getting together, doing cars and coffee. They're doing so my friend Mario, if you're listening, this is a challenge to you. Where I was talking to this guy Mario, who's in Nashville, super cool guy, has 3 scouts, but new to scouts, and he's just building community, building. So he's got over 30 trucks in this club, and I'm like, "What do you guys do, man? Go on trail rides?" He's like, "No, we just sit around parking lots and look at our scouts."
Well, yeah.
So, challenge, and I've talked to him about this, but challenge to you and to the guys in Southern California and all around the country that have these scout clubs: get out, and some of you guys are already doing this, but get out. Find little places to go off-road, obviously legal, and there's so many places to go on little adventures. But so some inspiration from the muscle car world
There's nothing better than driving them.
Yeah, it's so fun. And what's cool is there's so many. Like I was just looking around the Nashville area, and there's like 3 or 4 off-road parks. We don't have a lot of
really?
There's a lot of open land, particularly out west, but in the eastern half of the country, a lot of your ability to go off-road is going to be at parks, like private parks, where someone owns an old quarry or there's some old land, and they open it up to UTVs and Jeeps and vintage 4x4s.
Sure. I've seen different shows. I mean, there was one over in Nevada a few years ago.
Yeah, they're still going on.
Really, really good.
Now it's down in Cambridge. It's super fun.
So I got one for you. So watching the Dukes of Hazzard, now I have a General. From what I understand, a General should be able to go off-road pretty great.
Yes.
Like over rocks, boulders, streams, even if you're not jumping.
That's right.
I could go hang out with you and just chase a scout around. I assume
so
I could
fun.
learn what I need to learn to off-road that car. And there was an episode where they made it an off-roader.
Really?
Like they jacked it up and put.
Really?
I mean, they just jacked it up and put wheels and tires on it.
Some 31s probably.
Yeah, but they actually hogged out the fenders, so everything was clear. I'll find it. That's always been kind of a dream one.
And what's funny is the continuity, because probably in the next episode it's back to
no, it was totally normal by the next one, and the hogged out fenders were gone, and everything's
Those
fine.
guys are fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's do something, man. So another request from me to you.
Yeah.
Is I have these cool 80s cars. My E30 is getting built. I have been really tempted to it's going to be driftable. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Fun.
And
oh, geez, I totally left out drifting. Yeah, drifting is an enormous part of our world.
Yeah, but it's hard to find context for drifting.
It's easier on the West Coast, and it's a different style of car. There have been other cars that were real heavy into the muscle car world. There was a 69 Camaro that was like the drift king for a while.
Okay, interesting.
That has kind of gone away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love drift because that came out of like Japanese.
But let's like pull me into some local event.
Okay.
Like I want to go autocrossing. I've gone once. I loved it. Mm-hmm. That's actually what got me into like let's build an E30 because I drove my daughter's 740 Volvo wagon.
What'd you do?
Terrible. Really terrible. But it was such a blast. She got to drive. I got to drive. It was a blast. And that was just at Iowa State. Like the Iowa State Auto Club had like this really low rules. Like take the junk out of the trunk of your car. Mm-hmm. Make sure your battery's tied down. It's not like leaking fluids everywhere, and go drive. And we did like 15 laps, like just because it was. So some of the SCCA events they're just a little too regimented for my taste.
They do. I have done a rallycross at SCCA though.
That sounds fun.
All in on that.
In what car?
It was not mine.
Okay.
It was a Mini Cooper.
Okay.
It was a race car.
So I've heard it's kind of hard on like Luke, our normal co-host. He has a Nissan Sentra SER that he's taken rally crossing.
Yes.
And then the car was never the same.
It's autocross on dirt, but I mean, like the first thing you say is you got to put your windows up. Like, no, I'm gonna get hot. Like, oh, as soon as you start going, this is why.
Yeah.
I can't see anymore.
Yeah. So the last event, did you take this down to Good Guys and go autocrossing?
Yeah, that's the last event that this car has run this year. I actually took my General Lee down there, which is other than good control arms and good shocks, it's stock.
Yeah.
And it was a ball to do. I mean, it's terrible. It's not fast, but anything is kind of fun. The next thing that I'll probably do with this car, actually, I'm not sure what's next for this car. The General Lee is going to do a drifting experience.
Where?
I'm probably in the South somewhere. We got a pro drifter who's going to teach me how to do it so that I can learn the right way.
Right.
But I also just want to see if I can make that old car do it.
Cool.
That's the next thing I want to do.
So cool. It's got some kind of posse in it.
Yeah, so we use the same rear end shop just down the road here. So put a True Track in it.
Nice, perfect.
It was an 8 3/4 rear end that was given to me by a listener because I needed a rear end.
Nice.
And it had 323 gears in it, and they were still good. So I just left them. I mean, it's
323 True Track.
So it's a 323 with a True Track. So
that should be great.
True Tracks.
I love those.
I've got a True Track in this car. They're great.
They're great. They're one of our favorites.
Yes.
Another
Super
parallel
smooth.
between our worlds,
Yes.
man. True Tracks. Well, cool. Rob, really good talking. Let's do it again, and let's get together and get the General Lee off road.
Yes.
And you get me on road.
We can do this.
So we'll keep in touch, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.